What's up guys, today we're going over the new Arc Titan melee, the Thunderclap, and in my first Titan video I talked about how I kind of used this a little bit and wasn't a huge fan of it with or without the exotic, but I put more time into the subclass by like a great margin and actually wanted to make a deep dive on this ability and see how good it is in different things in the game, see how good it is for like single target damage. Is it good for Ackler, things like that. So in this video, we'll be breaking down this melee along with making a few cool builds along the way and just seeing how good this is overall. So looking at what it does, hold melee while grounded to plant your feet and begin charging your fist with arc energy. Release the melee button to unleash a devastating blast in front of you, dealing damage that increases with longer charge time. So if we go up to Carl and just simply tap the button, it's going to do 31,000 damage, which isn't bad for a melee right off the bat. But then if you start holding it down, the longer you hold it, the more damage you'll do. So I held it for like half a second there and it went up to 38,000. But if you hold it all the way to the max cap and the max charge, it'll hit for 56,000 on Carl, which is pretty decent. Not necessarily a crazy amount of damage, but not bad for just the base damage. So the first thing we can try to pair this with is 1-2 punch, the most obvious melee buff in the game, and for whatever reason it does not work. So I'm not sure if that is a bug or intended, but it definitely does not increase from 1-2 punch. But we can use knockout from our subclass, which will make it so our arc melees do more damage and they start health regen. So two very cool things. So look at the damage increase of that. Now on Carl, we will now with a full charge hit for 70,000, which will be a 25% increase. So not too bad. We can also use Spark of Feedback where we receive melee damage. We'll get the perk feedback for 5 seconds, which will now take the melee damage up by 40% to 98,000. And outside of our subclass, we can also use the Worm Gods, which will be the highest damage buff for melees in the game. And with this, both with knockout and feedback, I'm pretty sure there was feedback in this clip. It's hard to tell because there's too many buffs, but I definitely got meleeed as you see right there. And this took the damage to 528,000, which is obviously quite a bit. And you could further combo this with a debuff and Well of Ions if you wanted. But overall, if you're really going for like a huge melee combo on Titan, you know, Shield Bash on Void or even throwing hammers on Solar would just be way better. And that is just because you simply can't use 1-2 punch with this melee. So it's obviously greatly limited compared to the other subclasses. And honestly, in my opinion, not worth going for a huge one-hit combo. If you do, just use one of those other two subclasses. But with that being said, this melee still does a huge chunk of damage to higher health targets and will absolutely destroy majors, mini bosses, and things like that. And I think that's kind of like more so the intended use of this melee. So kind of switching over to Ackler, the first exotic we can use will be the skullfort, which will make it so our arc melee final blows will trigger health regen and restore melee energy. So for this, for Ackler, it isn't the most efficient thing ever, but it'll definitely get the job done, and it feels insanely satisfying to just use this melee over and over and over again. The only thing that is kind of an issue is the charge melee keybind isn't properly working yet with this melee. They said they're going to fix it next week, so that should help with it feeling like kind of clunky. So overall, this melee with this exotic feels really fun, but probably not like the most efficient thing in the world. But overall, I think the better all-around build would be with Heart of Immos, still using the storm grenades with the aspect, and now just instead of using like 3 ordinances, you can change 1 to melee wellmaker. And now with this, your grenade and melee should be getting a 35% buff with ×2 empowered, and you'll be getting all of your abilities back very quickly. So it's not only a melee build now, it's also a grenade build. So I think this will just be like the best all-around build and the best way to use the Thunderclap. And I feel like this is the intended use of Thunderclap. I don't feel like Thunderclap was ever meant to be like your main ability. It's more so ability to pop out for like a big group or like a group of majors or higher health target. And that leaves me with the new exotic, the Point Contact Cannon Brace, which will make it so when you defeat targets with Thunderclap, it'll restore melee energy. Then targets near you, when you use your Thunderclap, suffer lightning strikes. Being amplified increases the range of these strikes. So if we look at that while amplified, whenever we use our Thunderclap, right afterwards it'll do a huge lightning strike in the area that has a really large radius, but it doesn't do that much damage, to be honest. Most of the time it can't even kill patrol lost sector dregs, which is not a good look, to be honest. Basically any ability with Jolt or even Volt Shot on primary weapons is going to do more damage than this exotic, which isn't great. I think this is the one part that definitely needs to be buffed with the exotic. So trying to make a build with the Thunderclap, once again I think the best all-around build will be the Heart of Endless Light, still using the Storm Grenades, and now just using the Thunderclap as like a secondary ability. But let's try to make a full out Thunderclap build with a new exotic. So starting off with our mods, first one I'm running is Heavy Handed for the top part, where we'll get half of our melee back when we use it as long as we have stacks of chargeable light. I also have a hands-on my helmet to get a little bit extra super energy when we get melee kills. We also have Bountiful Wells on and double impact induction to help get our grenade back when we do melee damage. The next mod will be Melee Wellmaker, which will create 2 arc elemental wells when we get melee final blows. Then we also have Wells of Ion to increase our next melee's damage when we pick up the arc wells, and 2 invigorations to help get our melee back. And finally, our last one will be Elemental Charge to get stacks of chargeable light when we pick up the arc wells, along with 2 outreaches to help get our melee back when we use our thruster. And if there is any artifact mod you want to use, definitely feel free to use that. I don't think any of them are too important to this combo. Then I just have like the generic 4 fragments on. There's nothing really too crazy that helps out your melee here outside of feedback, but that's not going to be super consistent to actually proc. So now all in all, the way this build works is you simply use your melee to create 2 arc elemental wells. Pick those up, you'll get 2 stacks of chargeable light and get Wells of Ions, which makes it so your next melee will not only do more damage, but you'll get half of it back instantly. Then with the built-in energy return from the exotic itself, along with picking up the 2 arc elemental wells, you should have your next melee back as long as you kill, I think, 2 things with the melee itself. And this is all done with, I think, tier 6 strength. So if you had a higher amount of strength, it would more likely be even faster and would work with just like a single kill. But for tier 6, it seems like if you get 2 kills with a melee, you should have it back. And overall, it's a pretty cool combo and honestly not that bad at all. It still feels a little bit clunky because of the charged melee keybind, but once that's fixed, honestly not too bad. But once again, overall, I think the best way to use Thunderclap is as a tool to the overall kit of the Titan subclass and not like the main feature. So with the Heart of Endless Light build, you know, your grenade will still be extremely good for like group aggler, but then you'd have your Thunderclap for the higher health targets or groups of like majors and things like that. And as you see in this gameplay, it is the daily Legend Lost sector, and I was farming this a lot yesterday trying to get a better Heart of Endless Light roll, which I didn't even get a single drop all day. But aside that, I ran this a lot yesterday and I was using the shoulder charge as my melee, and my fastest run was I think 204, and I had like a few 205s and stuff like that. And this was my first run using Thunderclap, my only run I did today, and it was a 209. And I honestly felt like in a lot of situations the Thunderclap was just straight up better and would result in not only like an easier run but also a faster run. At this point in the run, I'm already almost over 10 seconds behind my fastest pace, and I make up for all that with the use of this melee in the boss room. And I feel like as I play more and more with this melee, and once the keybind is fixed, I think it'll fit in really well with a subclass and be a really good tool to add to the full kit, along with the storm grenades and things like that. So as I use this melee more and more, it's definitely growing on me, and I think a lot of people, including myself, were just trying to use it like the wrong way, trying to use it like a super high damage output melee, kind of like, you know, previous Titan melees. But I think if you use it as like your secondary ability and still let these storm grenades kind of shine in the overall build, I think it is honestly extremely good. So yeah, I think that is all I gotta say about the Thunderclap melee. I feel like it's one of the best and one of the worst abilities in the entire game at the same time. I'm so torn about it. I don't know which way to lean. So yeah, let me know what you think about it down below. Like usual, thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time.